Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Seconds Count. This is the podcast from the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service, which brings you behind the scenes of what goes on here on a daily basis as we strive to provide the best possible service to our patients. You know, every time that somebody phones an ambulance, they're going to expect a paramedic to come out, and they'll sometimes wonder what is the level of their training that helps them be able to deliver that top-notch care. Paramedics became a profession in 2018, and because it's a health and care profession, is now regulated by the HCPC. HCPC, their job, their purpose is to protect the public for all healthcare professionals, and they do that by regulating the professions and by supporting them and providing training and recognition for those training courses that are held. Today, we're joined by Florence Milliken from the Healthcare Professional Council. Welcome, Florence.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's good to have you in here. And Florence is going to take us through what the HCPC offers to our paramedics and therefore offers to their desire to raise the standard in terms of their care for our patients. So Florence, I'm going to ask you just sort of at the start, as I do with all our guests, give us a little bit of your background and how you became involved in this.
Thank you very much, John. So, believe it or not, actually growing up, I wanted to be an ambulance driver.
Wasn't everybody?
I don't know whether it was the driving at speed or the helping people, whatever it was, but that's what I always wanted to be. Unfortunately, around that time, there was no degree course to enable you to do that. And it was I grew up in that era where you were expected to, after you leave school, you get a university degree and whatever. And I didn't really know what I wanted to be other than an ambulance driver. So it was actually my mummy suggested, what about physiotherapy? Now, I didn't know what physiotherapy did at all, but my criteria was I looked to see, well, where is it? Where can you study it? And it was at Georgetown. And my daddy worked in Georgetown.
Right.
And I lived nearby. So I thought, happy days, I'll go there. Don't need to leave home. Keep my horse, all the rest of it. So anyway, I studied to do physiotherapy. And I worked in the NHS, really, in Northern Ireland really since 1995, bar 2 years when I was out in Uganda. And I have to say...
Sorry, what were you doing out in Uganda?
Well, working as a physiotherapist, I went out to set up a rehab centre for disabled children with the charity. And actually, while I was there, I met my husband,
right,
who lived 6 miles down the road at home, but went to Uganda to meet him, as you do. But, I would always say to people, if I had to do it all again, physio would be what I would do because I just loved it so much. That was really until I started doing this job about 2 or 3 years ago. When I've been.
So how long were you a physio then in total? Not trying to age you or anything.
No, thanks. Qualified in 95, and worked as a physio up until about 2 or 3 years ago. So at least 25 years.
95 is a good year because 95 was the year that Northern Ireland Ambulance Service was set up.
Well,
so
there
you were
you
just
are.
getting prepared for that.
There you are. So yes, I mean, physio a long time, let's just say. And it never leaves you really. But yes, so what I was saying, just, having met a lot of this work that I'm doing, met a lot of paramedics and people who work in NIAS, I think actually I probably would have enjoyed working as a paramedic equally as well as physio. But anyway, I'll explain how I ended up doing this job and leaving physio to do this. So at one point, I worked as an MSK physio, so we treat backs, necks, shoulders, all that kind of stuff.
And just for the public, MSK?
MSK stands for musculoskeletal.
Well, what does that mean?
It means that basically if you have a sore neck or a sore back or a sore shoulder, you would come to an MSK physio. Or you've had surgery or some, orthopedic surgery. Chests, I'm not really into chests or neurology, that type of thing. So that's what MSK is. And at one point, in our trust, we wanted to make sure that no matter where a patient went to for treatment, they were going to get the same level or standard of care, that we all knew what the best evidence-based practice was in relation to treating backs and necks and all the rest of it. And it was all just to raise the bar and make us the best physios we could be. But I started to realise actually what makes a really good physio is not just your clinical skills, it's how you treat people. It's your behaviours, it's your values, all that kind of stuff. And I realised that, I think, through all the different hats I had worn. So, like, I'd been a clinician, I had been a team leader, but I've also been a service user. So a couple of times I've had cancer. And I have fostered two wee boys who are now adopted. That was a long process. And with all those different hats on, I interact with a lot of healthcare professionals, a lot of very professional healthcare professionals. But at times, there was a bit of unprofessionalism that I experienced as well. And that had quite an impact on the outcome, maybe for me as a team leader or for my boys or whatever. And I started to really appreciate the importance of our behaviours and the impact on our behaviours on those that we work with. So I started doing a bit of work on professionalism and discovered that the HCPC already had done a lot of work on
So was the HCPC not based in Northern Ireland at that stage?
No. The HCPC is a UK-wide organisation, so their headquarters are in London. This role here is a role that we have one of me for both for Northern Ireland, for Scotland, Wales and England. I'll explain a wee bit more about that.
Yeah, but I'm wondering where at that time that you're talking about,
yeah,
were healthcare professionals not regulated?
Oh yes,
they
yes,
were.
Yes. We regulate 15 different healthcare professionals, physios, one of those, paramedics are those as well. Yeah. So I started. So I had already had links with the HCPC because I was, a registrant. Yes. Yeah. So I went to them and I saw that actually they had done a lot of research on professionalism and the link between patient safety and professionalism. So then I started to do a wee bit of work on that. Ended up doing some sessions about professionalism with students. And at that time, this job then came up.
Right.
So this is a very new job.
And the title of this job is?
A mouthful. I'll have to get it right now. Professional Liaison Consultant. Mm-hmm. So this team is quite a new
team. So even that term, Professional Liaison Consultant, it does sort of take away a little bit of the fear about the regulation, etc. You're doing much more. Yeah. When people talk about regulation, people think about the big stick.
You're right. You're right.
But that term is much softer.
Yes.
And is that what the role does entail?
Yes, the liaison bit is the important bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I suppose what I could say is in more recent years, so you've already said that the purpose of the HCPC is to protect the public. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to protect people, a better way of doing it is to prevent problems in the first place. Yeah. So the HCPC have invested a bit more now, as all regulators are doing now, in the preventative side of their work. Mm-hmm. So they still do that core stuff of fitness to practice, of setting standards. They set the standards for the education programmes for our registrants, and they'll look at a concern. If a concern is raised up about an individual, they'll investigate. It's probably useful to say there's less than 1% of our registrants ever have a concern raised about them. So it's very small.
Was it too cheeky for me to ask what percentage of those would be in the paramedicine field? Across the UK, don't single us out.
I actually don't know. I don't know that I have that information. Right. No, we do.
But it's a small number. 1% is very small.
There's less than 1%. Yeah. And even those concerns that are raised, a lot of them don't go any further.
Well, that's what I was going to ask too. Are they always?
No.
Is there sanctions come out as a result of them?
There's a very, very. I think it's like 0.01% of ever get struck off or whatever. Yeah. So it's a very small number.
So then, how does the preventative agenda manifest itself in terms of what the HCPC do?
Yep, so that's a really good question. So we want to prevent small things becoming big. Mm-hmm. We want to educate our registrants about what their standards mean and what that looks like in practice for them. So, for example, we'll look at our data and our insights coming in, and we'll see that that there are some concerns coming in about how registrants are using social media, for example. Mm. And that's a hot topic.
Yeah.
So that has informed our practice now. So we have created some resources online about social media. We have done a number of webinars about social media just to educate people, just to stop and think about the impact of social media, because we're living in a different world here. We're now at the press of a button and
at half 10 at night when you've just had a rough day, you could just say something.
And it goes viral. Yeah. And once it's out, it's out. And people just need to stop and think and be a bit reflective. Mm-hmm. So I'll lead workshops on that, for example. But, a lot of work I do is like talking about culture.
Mm-hmm.
Culture is another hot topic. Professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I'll talk about the research behind all these things. So we know that if somebody's even mildly rude to you, your cognitive function declines by 61% on average.
It's a heck of a stat.
So that's a really important stat and a really interesting stat. And I think when people realise that, then they start to appreciate actually my behaviours and how I treat other people really matters. And the research backs all of that up.
Mm-hmm.
And
but to me, it's a bit of a contradiction that people get involved in a caring profession, and yet we've got this issue about culture. But people are human.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Mm-hmm. We're all human.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, to be honest, we have our standards about being honest and open, about treating people politely and all the rest of it.
About being kind.
About being kind, about putting the patient first and all of that there. I think, though, having said that, there's a list of standards there. How you actually behave probably boils down more to your own values, your own behaviours, your own habits, how you've been brought up, all of that. And we maybe sometimes fail to be self-reflective. Certainly accurate self-reflection is an important thing, a real interest in mine. And that's what the workshops that I do give people an opportunity to stop and reflect and think about, what sort of a role model am I being? Mm-hmm. How did I react in that situation? And as you say, we're all human and we all make mistakes.
And the beauty about the self-reflection is that if you do find something about yourself which is less than it should be, you don't have to go and broadcast it to the world. You just need to change your behaviour within yourself.
Yeah.
And maybe not think about changing it forever, but just baby steps at a time, so that does become your culture, to be kind and to be reflective. Yeah.
Yes, we need to be instilling habits, because it's the habits that stick.
That's right.
Particularly when you're under pressure. There's no issues with being professional whenever everything's going well. Mm-hmm. It's whenever you're in difficult situations, that's whenever it comes out. So we have to be sometimes intentional about thinking about what we say and how we say it. Mm-hmm. And I think that self-reflective piece is very important. And do
you find much of a take-up for that?
Absolutely.
Do you?
Absolutely. People don't get the chance to be reflective nowadays in NHS. It's boom, 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 patient after patient after patient. And whenever a manager, gives their staff this opportunity to sit and listen, and I share a lot of the research, but then we get into the nitty-gritty of what it's like to work in your own department and what that looks like. What does it look like to be polite and to receive feedback? Receiving feedback's a big one.
Yeah.
How you receive feedback is very important, and that's the only way you learn, and being reflective.
Well, I think in terms of receiving feedback, and the first time you receive it, you may be very defensive, but if it becomes a habit, you're realising that this is a journey you're on with the person who's providing that feedback. Nobody's trying to put anybody down for the sake of putting people down. It's about making each other better people to provide a better service to our patients, surely.
Exactly. No, 100%. And, I do some sessions sometimes called Just Culture. And a Just Culture is about where we're learning from our mistakes and we're sharing that learning. Mm-hmm. And it's about encouraging leaders and managers that when something goes wrong, most times it's a bigger issue than one person. It's not... Yes, there's a few bad apples around, but usually it's about the barrel that they're in.
Yeah.
It's system pressures and a lot of things coming together that's caused the problem. But if we're not open and honest about something that has gone wrong, then nobody can learn from that.
Yeah.
And you look at the aviation industry. They're always learning from anything that goes wrong. Mm-hmm. They'll spend years looking for a black box to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
And, that's what we want to encourage, that kind of just culture where people aren't defensive. If something goes wrong, they'll look at the reasons why it happened and not who is it to blame.
And do you find, Florence, that the journey towards just culture, do you find many people referring to a blame culture? Is that an issue still?
But people talk about a blame culture, and then they talk about the opposite being a no blame culture. Mm-hmm. But it's not a no blame culture either. It's a just culture, because sometimes people do have to, you have to take account, for what you've done. So, it's not about just letting people off with it and not holding anybody to account. Of course, we're all responsible for our actions, but it's looking at the bigger picture, and there's usually a bigger picture involved there, and it's getting in and looking at what went wrong.
So mixed within your answer there is both this regulation of making sure that paramedics are doing what they're supposed to do, and there's also this softer bit about the reflection. So, and I think the reflection bit, people don't have to do those, right? So I suppose it's a little bit of personally motivated CPD, but there is a form of CPD within paramedicine, isn't it?
So we have 3 sets of standards that our paramedics need to keep. So one of them is about their behaviours, standard of conduct, performance and ethics. One is about their skills and their knowledge. And then the third one is about CPD, or continuing professional development. Because
how's all those assessed, all 3 of those? How are they assessed?
Well, we don't assess them as such. So it really, you live out those standards. And every 2 years you are declaring that you are, working by these standards. So you do need to know them. I mean, you don't need to know 7.2 says blah, 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 blah. But you do need to be aware of the principles behind them. Every 2 years you re-register, and you're saying that you're abiding by the standards. But 2.5% of the profession, let's say 2.5% of paramedics and of physios, will be asked to demonstrate their CPD. And it's called the CPD audit. And it always gives people a sharp intake of breath. I know that. If you're worried, am I going to get chosen this year? It's not that big a thing, to be honest. And that's one of the things I like to talk about. I get chosen for CPD audit in the course of my career. And if you're doing CPD, and CPD will look different for everybody, it's not a problem, because it's just about demonstrating that you've got a list of what you're doing, and you're doing stuff that's actually making a difference. It's making a difference to you. It's making a difference to your to the service users as well. And reflection can be part of that. Now, what CPD looks like for paramedics?
Just explain what CPD is.
So CPD is continuing professional development, and that can be a range of things. I think a lot of people think of it as just going to courses or doing in-service training. Yes, that is part of it, because that's part of your learning, but reflection is a big part of it. And actually, reflection is mentioned in the standards. We do need to be doing reflection because that's the only way you learn. Right. But that reflection could be on, you've just had a patient with you, and you're talking about it with your colleague, and you're talking about what happened, what you did right, what was good about that, or what maybe we would do the next time differently. And that's a reflection, and that's part of CPD.
Yeah. And how are they expected to evidence that?
So, I mean, we would expect you to keep a record of your CPD. So if paramedics just look at the standards, there's only 5, and it's about keeping a list of the different things that you do, whether it's a conversation, writing up a case study, whatever. And then, you might want to pick 2 or 3 maybe more significant things and write up a reflection on that and keep that. And I mean, when I was a team leader, I like to encourage my physios to bring that to their annual review, performance review, and we could look at some of the learning that they've done and how that has developed them, and how they're using that learning. And that's what paramedics can do as well. It might look differently, but you're never asked. We never assess you on how you're keeping those standards, but we will ask, as I say, 2.5% will be asked to produce evidence. It's called a portfolio of, or an audit of how they've been doing their CPD.
Yeah. And then what happens? That portfolio comes into HCPC. Who looks at it and who makes decisions about it?
Yeah, it's our registration department. They look at it. And if there's, 9 times out of 10, they're absolutely fine. If there's gaps in it, they'll just write back to you and ask, now, could you provide a wee bit more evidence in relation to that there? And there's a lot of resources on our website about that, to support people if they end up that they are chosen. But to be honest, we really should be doing this through our careers anyway.
No, I get that, yeah.
And it's just pulling it together then if you get asked. And all.
But again, it's a supportive process that you would like to see it as. It's not
yes.
Anyway, trying to catch anybody out.
100%, definitely not. I mean, nobody's ever got struck off
Well, that's what I found
for
out.
their CPD audit.
Yeah.
We want people. We know we need paramedics, physios, whoever in the workforce. We need all our registrants to stay in the workforce. We want to support them to do that. We don't want to see anybody ending up in fitness to practice. It's there to catch the bad apples, if you like. Ideally, that's what it's there for, and those numbers are very small.
Yeah.
We're not there to, most people go to work to do a really good job and do their best.
So is there anything else you've been doing apart from the reflective pieces that since you took up this post a couple of years back?
So, I mean, in relation to NIAS, maybe more specifically, so obviously I come from a physio background, don't know a huge amount about paramedics. So I've been spending a bit of time with paramedics themselves. Various managers I know talking about the challenges. So if we go back to the title that I have, it's Professional Liaison Consultant.
Yeah.
So my role is a two-way process. So I'm out here trying to hear what it's like on the ground for paramedics in Northern Ireland.
Right.
And that's why my role exists for Northern Ireland. Obviously, I get the Northern Ireland people.
Yeah.
I get the accent, I get the crack, I get, what it's like. So I want to hear from them, and I can take that back into HCPC. And
what do they do with it?
Well,
does it change anything at all?
Yes, it definitely can change. And I'm sure there's various ways in which, the information that I can bring in, we can provide more resources on, people need to know more about scope of practice, or, they don't understand maybe what that might look like. And that feeds into even our standards as well. Our standards were reviewed recently. So there's different standards now in relation to scope of practice and social media and that type of stuff. So we listen to what's happening on the ground, and I can take that back in and use that in a Northern Ireland context as well. So, like, for example, we've had in the NHS, we've had Encompass has come in recently, which is an electronic record keeping system. So I knew that that's going to bring some challenges in various ways to people. So I just did a Northern Ireland specific session on record keeping and what the expectations are on our record keeping, and kind of relating it a wee bit to electronic records specifically. So that's just to support people to understand that.
So, and how do you get this information out to our paramedics?
So there's various ways that we can do that. If you go onto the website, and do you know what? As a registrant myself, I very rarely was satisfied. I hold my hand up to say that. But there's a lot of resources on there. So we have done webinars that are recorded and they're there. Yeah. You can watch those. There's a lot of documents. There's document on confidentiality. Those sort of social media, those types of things that you can gem up on. I can come out to the workplace and do specific sessions on whatever is needed. I got to spend time with different halos across the province. Got to chat to paramedics, EMTs, students, just as they were coming about and doing their work, and they had a bit of downtime. That's part of the liaison service as well. So hearing from them, and so basically, I'm there to listen, but also to share information.
Sure.
And more than happy to come out and do webinars even, do another podcast. Maybe we do one on some, the future. I think the chat, I've been able to meet with managers and leaders and things in NIAS. We've talked about culture. We've talked about raising concerns, those types of things. I really want to get to speak to those on the ground a bit more and hear what their challenges are and be there for them and support them in whatever way that looks like.
Yeah, and you find support within the organisation for doing that?
Very much so. Very much so. People have been great, and I know when I was a registrant and I thought about HCPC, and I didn't really want to have any dealings with them. And I think you pick that up just as it's nearly like a default reaction to regulation.
Yeah.
Even though we all benefit from regulation.
Talk maybe too.
Yes, no, 100%. And, I often talk to students and I say, we benefit from regulation day and daily.
Yeah.
You turn your tap on in the morning and you're not thinking about, is this clean, fresh
That's right.
water? Somebody else is doing that job for you. So as consumers, we value regulation. Sometimes as people being regulated, we can be this default defensiveness. And I was probably just got caught up in that the same. And we want to break that down because, there's so much that the HCPC can offer with all the insights and the data that we have. We can make it specific to the different nations. And if people engage with us, then we can do that. But you need to engage with us to do that.
Yeah. So if you come back to the very core of it then, to protect the public, right? How do you think that you actually do that? In a couple of sentences.
In a couple of sentences, how we do that. Well, if you think about, let's think about why are we regulated? Why are some professions regulated and others aren't? And it's because of the risks involved and the responsibilities that you have in your role as a paramedic. You've got big responsibilities there. So we need to make sure people are not just doing what they see as right in their own eyes.
Yeah.
There has to be standards there as to how you treat people to keep them safe.
Yeah.
So we've got standards around record keeping, because if people are not keeping records, that's going to be a problem. That's not keeping people safe.
Yeah. And all the registrants are fully aware of your existence. Do you think the public are as aware of your existence as perhaps they could be?
That's interesting. I think that they're probably getting more aware, I would say. And, we have seen a bit of an increase in the numbers of fitness to practice concerns coming into us. And we reckon part of that is because the public is getting a bit more aware. They're maybe more aware of the GMC who regulate doctors, or the NMC who regulate, nurses and midwives. But the HCPC is probably not something that rolls off the tongue. Well, it doesn't roll off the tongue anyway, as well. But,
Try saying the full title.
No. So they're probably not as aware, but they would be aware that people would be regulated. Now, maybe you're not aware that within NIAS, there will be some who are regulated and some who aren't. So those who are regulated obviously have that bit more responsibility and a different scope of practice, and can administer medications.
But yet the existence of the HCPC as a regulating body is actually manifest to the public by the higher levels of clinical care.
Yes.
You make sure that those higher levels of clinical care are first and foremost in the delivery of the paramedics who are giving that care out.
100%. And as you said, our role is to protect the public. In doing so, you're protecting the paramedics as well, because if you are doing the higher, the standards and all the rest of it, you will be protected in a sense. But yes, that core role is to protect the public. And, it is about making people aware of what that means, what that looks like in context, and making people think about, their standards and their behaviours and their clinical skills. It's not just about clinical skills. Obviously, that's very important. But once people come onto the register, they've obviously done a course. So now up in Magee, we have our paramedicine course, which is relatively new. So everybody coming out from that course successfully, well, that course has met our standards. So we know that if people have qualified, they're at that level. And then they will continue to develop as paramedics.
And do you engage with them at student level?
I do. Yeah. I was there just a couple of weeks ago with the students.
It must be very different, because the number of paramedics who've been in our organisation who've been here for such a long, long time,
yes,
they wouldn't have had this initial engagement during their training or their education.
That's right.
But the new students coming out, they're immersed in it from the very word.
They are. That
must be beneficial for everybody.
Do you know what? It really is. And I talk to the students about this, that, I show them kind of their journey, their path to becoming a paramedic. And we talk about that. But I also have a wee slide up that I talk about, not everybody has been on that same journey. And you need to be aware that when you're working alongside a lot of these other paramedics or EMTs or whoever they are, they haven't had that same journey. They haven't had that very academic, maybe, start to their careers, which isn't, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing or a good thing, because, you could nearly argue that before you start to become a paramedic, it'd be good to get a bit of life experience, because it's quite a unique job.
It really is. And, in terms of the paramedics who didn't have that journey, they still share the same outlook on caring for patients that anybody coming into the job today has.
Totally.
And just about you saying the life experience, years ago we always said that the best route through the ambulance service was to start in PCS, where you learn how to engage with patients, going to outpatient appointments, and then the EMT, and then the paramedic route. But things are different now.
Things are different, but I do talk to the students about the importance of, gleaning from those paramedics who haven't come through that route, and learning from them for all that life experience, because they don't have that.
They don't.
They have a lot to learn. In relation to that life experience. You talk to people.
And at the same time, the owl hands, as they're called in the north here, they will learn from the new people coming through, the enthusiasm that they bring into the job, and it reinvigorates sometimes our longer serving paramedics. So it's a win-win.
It's a two-way thing. So, I have heard, we talk about, for example, reflection, back to reflection, and it's just you're steeped in reflection. It's a positive thing. Mm-hmm. But yet, for other people, they say reflection, well, that's only something you do if something's gone wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's what they've grown up with, but that's totally not the case. We know you can't learn anything or develop without reflection. So I will talk to students, sometimes you might even need to set a good example, and don't listen to those who say, oh, that's only for the...
Yeah, and I get that, because the reflection isn't always about self-reflection, because as a crew, you can notice somebody doing something and reflect on what they did, and learn from it in a positive way, taking it forward to your own practice. Yeah. Isn't that right?
100%. We're actually reflecting all the time, really. Yeah. Because you're watching and you're learning, and people are role models. You're always learning from other people. You're always influencing the people around you.
Yeah.
And yes, absolutely, you have a lot to learn from those.
Right. So then, Florence, just to bring this to a close, and thanks so much for coming in. I think it's been very informative for our staff and for the public watching, because it's about patient care at the end of the day and the highest clinical expertise. Is there any message you would like to put out to our paramedics about engaging with HCPC?
Yes, I sometimes use a wee analogy, and I show a slide up in some of my sessions of my dad. So my dad is a bit of an animal lover, although he doesn't have any animals of his own. And I've a wee slide of him with holding an alpaca and a goat and a wee wild bird and all the rest of it. And I say to people, now, it looks like my dad loves animals. What's he missing? And he's missing a dog. He doesn't have a dog. So I said to Dad, you need a dog. He's getting older, potentially a bit more grumpy. A dog would be great. And I explained all the positives of getting a dog. Wasn't interested, wouldn't have a dog, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, well, if I get my dad a dog, he'll see the wee face and he'll love it. Mm-hmm. Well, got my dad a dog, saw the wee face, and I went down like a lead balloon. And
you're not doing an analogy of HCPC and a dog, are you?
No. Stay with me. So anyway, he hated the dog, didn't want the dog, was really cross with us for getting him this dog, blah, blah, blah. So over the next few days, though, I stuck with this dog. I was going to have to get rid of it, but my mum took it while I went off to work. Mum and Dad took the dog. And anyway, cut long story short, by the end of the week, I came home and Daddy's saying, look at this wee dog will do. Look at this wee dog. Oh, this wee dog will eat this and all the rest of it. So needless to say, Dad fell in love with a wee dog. And I have a lovely photograph of him with putting a wee jumper on the dog and putting it on a wee car and pushing it along. Gets a great laugh. But the point of the analogy is that even though Daddy knew the benefit of it, and we had stated the benefit of engaging with the dog, it wasn't until he actually engaged with the dog for himself did he actually benefit from it for himself. And I do think there are many ways that we can engage with the HCPC that we don't appreciate. For example, I've already mentioned our website is full of great resources. If there's anything else that you would like more resources on, please tell me, and we can put resources on. You go onto YouTube channels and there's webinars that have been recorded. Obviously, engage with me. I would love to come out to different stations and all the rest of it and do sessions on professionalism, professional boundaries is a good one, or social media record, whatever it is, anything that's challenging in relation to record keeping or in relation to keeping your standards. So I can come out and do that. The other key thing I would say is if a concern is ever raised about you, now remember, the very small percentage, the important thing is, and HCPC says this, engage with us. The worst thing you can do is shut up shop and not engage.
Just deny.
Because when something goes wrong, what we're looking for is, have you got insight? Have you, has there been an apology made? Do you understand what happened? Is there remorse? We're looking to see what the risk is to the future. Is anything ever like? It's not what you were like then. It's to do with being fit to practice now and going forward in the future. So insight is such an important thing to show, and when that's demonstrated, then we know there's no risk.
Okay. And going back to your first point about you engaging and wanting to engage more with our staff, what is the channel for staff to contact you or to get in touch with you?
If you even go onto the website and the professional liaison service, just put that in search, you'll see an email address, and you can use that, or I can give you contact. There's various people know me, Johnny Noble, Kieran McKenna, various people would know me in the trust.
organisation.
In the organisation, and I'm currently working with one of the trade union reps and Johnny, and we're going to come up with a wee session about what happens if something goes wrong, if a mistake happens, and what's everybody's role within that. And it's to take away that fear.
Yeah. So it's a matter of watch this space, it is about primarily, it's about support and preventative.
Yes, it's about the support, preventing things from going wrong, preventing small things from becoming big, encourage you to be reflective, encourage you to be proactive in thinking about this, not just to go into your work and, be a wee bit more intentional about how you speak to somebody, how you engage with your CPD or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We all need to do that. It's not just paramedics. We're all in the same boat.
I do see, it's difficult coming from a day's work not to bring your work home with you, but at the same time, we've got to make sure we don't bring our home into our work, which will impact upon things. Look, Florence, thanks so much for coming in. It's been great talking to you. Very informative. I hope the staff get a lot out of it. I hope the public who are watching this get a bit of an insight as to what HCPC is about and how everybody is working together to try and improve the clinical care that's on offer to them from paramedics within this organisation. So thanks very much for coming in. And we will have you back some other time.
Well, that would be good. It wasn't too painful, so thank you very much. I'll come back.
So there you go. Thanks very much for watching this edition of Seconds Count, and we look forward to seeing you next time. So until then, take care. Bye.